pale orcs with orange armor. What more could you want from orcs, Victor?
Quite a lot, but they're good.
I painted these. How did I paint them? I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, recently we got the new Kill Team Brutal and Cunning box sent to us by Games Workshop a couple weeks early so that we had a chance to review it. Brad's going to go through his process painting the orcs. I've painted the ratlings, which we'll show in another video in some days' time.
Yeah, this is how I did it. I'm going to show you. They're easy. So easy. Easy orange orcs, dude. Okay, I'm starting off here. I've used AK Rust Basecoat Spray Primer to start this. I figured this was a good color to go with this scheme because it's kind of like rusty browny orange, and if there's a little bit showing through, it's not a big deal. Like, it'll kind of just fit. And then, okay, it's time to get some actual paint on these guys. I wanted to start like as close to the inside of the model as possible, the hardest to reach places. There's a lot of skin that's underneath like straps and metal and all this stuff. So I'm starting with the skin. I found this really nice color, AK Gray Green. It's like a really nice pale, like desaturated green. And for orcs, I really don't like the like really, really dark saturated green or like the really bright, like cartoony greens. For me, this is the perfect orc skin color. I was really happy I found some. Okay, now moving on to the armor, the other main color in this scheme. I really wanted like really nice orange that didn't look like highlightery orange. Yeah. I don't know if you found this, but so many times when I've got orange colors, they end up just looking like too fluorescent almost.
Yeah, and glossy.
Yeah. So trying this out, this is the first time I've used this paint, but I really, really like it. It's like a nice, deep, kind of dark, but not too muddy orange. Mm-hmm. Going through and picking out all the armor bits. There's a lot. Okay, I've got a really nice gray paint down here going on the pants. It's like a really kind of like bluey gray. I use this paint a lot. It's really nice. And then there's a fair amount of leather on these guys. There's like a crotch towel on the knob, but like all the models have straps, right? So I'm using Rhinox hide. This is my go-to leather now. Like Rhinox hide is such a good paint. Have you used it?
No, you know what? I've like totally moved away from Citadel paints just because I hate the pots so much. But this is a good one. I might pick this one up.
Yeah, I really like... I agree, right? Like, I don't like the pots either, but Rhinox hide is one of the paints that I will suffer through the pots because the paint is so good. There's not a lot of black on these models, but I'm picking out cables, as you can see here, and I also used it on the shoes. Black Legion Contrast paint. This is another just like speed choice. Don't have to mix the paint, just use it straight out of the pot, and it covers well enough. There's like a bunch of like rocket bits all over these guys. I'm kind of picking between red and yellow. So I've got Khorne Red for the red parts, and then Averland Sunset for the yellow parts, both Citadel. For the Averland Sunset, I'm actually using the airbrush version just because I find it annoying to have to always thin the yellow because the yellow's coverage is so bad. So I just use it basically straight out of the pot from the airbrush paint. It works better, I think. Yeah, this was like very satisfying on all the little glyphs and stuff.
One man's satisfying is another man's tedious.
Okay, really last main step in the base coating here, I got the goated metal paint, Leadbelcher, Citadel. Just going through and picking out all the bare metal. There's a ton on these guys. And just to wrap up the base coating, I have made some mistakes where just like it's hard to get in a tight spot with the brown or whatever. So I'm just going through and quickly cleaning up some spots that I missed. Also, like this glyph on his hand, I missed it when I was doing the rest of the yellow.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, so I just had to go back and do it. But it's easy enough, and I'm not too concerned at this stage if like the coverage is 100% solid. If you can see some of the Rhinox hide underneath the skin that I was just cleaning up, it doesn't matter too much because I'm going to go over it anyway. So I'm not really concerned at all about having a really strong solid coat.
We don't need to be worried at all.
So the base coating's done here, and now I'm going through, and maybe a controversial step, I'm adding a wash. Going with Seraphim Sepia here, covering up basically the entire model, and I have some stuff to say about this. Okay, here's the thing. There's a lot of controversial opinions about washes, right? Some people love washes. Some people say, oh man, I can paint a mini without a wash. They're so good for speed. They add so much. Some people are like, They muddy up everything. They're terrible. I hate using them. They're like a crutch for bad painters. So here's my thing. I've used washes on some minis. I've used like oil washes and enamels, like Dirty Down Rust or whatever. Not Rust, Dirty Down Grime. What's it called?
Streaking Grime.
Streaking Grime. I've used Streaking Grime. And also, I've painted minis with no wash, you know? And I think they all serve a different purpose, all different methods, you know, like depending on what you want. Here's the thing. With Seraphim Sepia in particular, this is one of the worst culprits of annoying little things that mess with your paint job. There's two main issues that I have. So first off, it kind of makes everything glossy.
Yeah, I hate that.
It's like your whole minis turn a bit glossy. And yes, I shook it for like 7 minutes, like a Polaroid picture, like forever, dude. And it still doesn't help. I got my brush in the bottom and like mushed it around the bottom. Like I did everything I can think of to make it well mixed. Still super glossy. But I know that I'm going to end these minis with a really matte varnish. So I'm not too concerned. I think that's a problem that can easily be solved at the end of the process. However, there is another issue that you're going to see maybe little bits of this while I show the rest of the footage. Once this dries, in the recesses or in the parts of the mini where there's the highest concentration of like pooling and stuff, there's parts of the model where it doesn't actually dry dark.
Oh yeah,
like it actually dries. It's like frosted in the most recessed parts, so it's actually lighter, and it just like messes with everything because you want the darkest recesses to be the darkest because they're the most in shadow and stuff. So oftentimes I have to go into some parts with like a dark brown or whatever and just like re-darken them. So it's stupid because why am I doing a wash if I have to do this anyway? Like what's the point? Secondly, with Seraphim Sepia, in those areas, when it's particularly bad, there's like a crackling effect and it adds a bit of texture.
Yeah, that's terrible.
So annoying. However, I love what it did to the color of the skin because like I'm going to highlight back up with the original color, but it has kind of like an orangey, greenish, like weird dark tone for the lowest level of contrast or like the darkest darks, I want to say. But for me, like the best thing that this does is it adds that nice like rusty look to the metal.
Yeah.
Which I really love. Like Leadbelcher with the Seraphim Sepia, it's like kind of orangey brown. It looks super rusted, and then you can add highlights over top and like sketchy weathering bits.
Or go the other way, right? Like add more shadow and more rust. Like, but it does a good base for that.
So I stuck with this strategy for these models. I think in the future, I'd like to try different methods of doing like rusted metal. So I'm not leaning on this wash because the downsides are pretty annoying. I really hate the downsides. I'm not sure it's worth it, but the upsides are nice.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, this feels like we're having a conversation 2 years after everyone else, but when they changed the formula for the washes, it really turned me off of the whole line. And as I was painting my ratlings, I found an old bottle of Nuln, of original Nuln. What a paint.
So much better,
So good. You know, it like finds the recesses, and it was actually like a bad one that I remember I stopped using it because even though it wasn't the gloss one, it like came out kind of glossy no matter how much I shook it. But now that we're AK Ultramat guys, it's not a huge problem. But make Nuln Oil great again, you know?
Yeah. Also, make our Patreon even greater than it already is.
It's pretty great.
We gotta say thank you to the 1 HP gangsters and mountain goats.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for all your continued support. We can't wait to bring more varied content like this out, and of course, lots of battle reports and that sort of thing.
Yeah, let us know in the comments of this video, also on our Discord and on our Patreon. If you're a patron, let us know what you think of this painting content because it's not something we normally do too much of, but we're trying it out.
Yeah.
All right.
What's going on, everyone? As of the time of filming this video, the workers at the Vallejo paint plant in Spain have been on strike for a few weeks now. They're asking for some more competitive wages, safer working conditions, and protection from workplace harassment. These are all things that we absolutely believe in and absolutely stand in solidarity with. We're not boycotting these products. The union has not asked for a boycott, and so often like an irresponsible boycott can kind of delay things and make things even worse for workers, so we're not calling for that right now. But we are not going to be mentioning any of the Vallejo products we use in this or any future painting videos until the work action has been resolved. So if you're curious about what paints we're using, we'll put them in the description once the workplace action has been resolved and once everyone's back to work and being treated the way they deserve.
Yeah, support worker rights.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
All right, well, now that the base coating and the wash is done, I'm next going and I'm gonna deal with the base. So this is Citadel Stirland Mud. This is a complete shill of like a premium basing paste product.
Yeah, that's great when you want more dollars per grams.
I know, but I had it. So I'm like plopping it around everywhere, trying to have nice big chunky areas so it like covers up a lot of the flatness. And then I think previously on this channel you've referred to this as the toddler method of basing.
I have, yeah.
I'm just like scraping off the excess bits off the rim because I like a nice clean rim, you know? Gotta have a nice clean rim.
Yeah, you gotta use your fingers.
Yeah, so once that dries, I'm going over the entire base with Gorthor brown. This is kind of like an orangey brown, light brown. I'm going for kind of like, not quite desert, but almost like scrubland base here. So I'm just covering up the brown, but again, I'm not too concerned if this has some like of the dark brown showing through. It really doesn't matter. It just adds more depth and like variety. Then kind of one more step on the base. I've got Zandri dust. This was just like an experiment and it seemed to work okay. So I'm taking the side of my brush and scraping it pretty like heavily and generously along the most raised parts of the base. And then I'm kind of stippling just very roughly, almost like a dry brush stipple over the more recessed parts of the base, just so there's variety and more interest than just like a one solid color. I don't know, I've used this technique a lot with different colors on my basing lately, and it just is quick, it's simple, it's not the most interesting, but it's like interesting enough. You put some tufts on later.
Yeah, it generates a lot of contrast, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay, now this is, you might laugh, I'm taking Rhinox hide and just like putting it all in the recesses of the face. So the mouth, the eyes, the nose holes, the ear holes. The most recessed parts of the models don't look great after the wash. So I'm just doing this to make sure there's like a solid dark coat here. And then I'm moving on to highlighting. So basically every paint here, I'm just highlighting with the base color I used, plus a tiny bit of Palid witch flesh mixed in. So the skin here is that same AK gray-green with just a little bit of Palid witch flesh mixed in. And I'm doing 2 layers of highlights. So a pass you can see here, I'm just, you know, going in. This is almost the pure paint. There's almost no Palid witch flesh here. But then I do later go in and I add in a bit more of the lighter tone and do another level of highlights. You know, this is where the model really comes to life. And I definitely spend the most time by far highlighting the face. That's like probably 70% of the time I spend. It's really hard to get good footage of you painting tiny details. Like, I don't know how these people do it, all these painting channels.
Yeah, I know.
They get like good footage of the details. 90% of the footage I took here, I had to cut because my head was in the way.
yeah, definitely.
But I also went in, so after I did the base colors on the face, I got Screamer Pink, which I love, to just pick out the tongue and the eyes, like not really the pupils, but just like to add some color into the eye sockets. And then I did some Screamer Pink plus a lot of Palid witch flesh and a bit of the green to do the lips, you know, and then I just like picked out the little ridges on the lips. I think that added a lot, especially for the orcs. That's kind of like an orky thing. Looks like worms on their lips. I also got Zandri dust going in and picking out the teeth. I think picking out the teeth is like something that really elevates your faces. It doesn't take that long. You just need like a good tip on your brush. Yeah, you can see here, same thing. This is, first I'm starting with just the orange and going in and kind of like reinforcing the original areas where I painted orange. But I'm leaving, there's a lot of like scratchy parts molded into the model, right? So I'm just not avoiding those so you can kind of get more contrast. And then later I go in and do some line highlights, like edge highlights and stuff, with a mix of the paint that has more of the Palid witch flesh in it. But yeah, basically the highlight's pretty boring, just all the base colors plus a bit of Palid witch flesh. The edge highlights really help. I'm not being too careful because it's like orky, it's kind of messy.
Yeah.
I'm not caring about like the smoothest edge highlights in the world. Even if I tried, I probably couldn't get them that smooth, but I'm really not trying here. For the highlights on the metal, I'm using just pure Leadbelcher, but because the Seraphim Sepia works so well to make kind of like a rusty metal, I'm just like very generously edge highlighting and just doing scratches and lots of areas just to bring back the metallic feel to it. But This metal recipe is so good. For all my hate on Seraphim Sepia, it works really well for metal. I'm almost done here. I'm now just basing the rims. Sometimes I do black rims, but I also like to do a rim color that kind of goes with the paint job.
Yeah.
So here I use the Rhinox hide that I used on the leather and stuff.
Yeah, I think like a base rim color has to be really, really good to be better than black, but this one works.
Yeah, this one works. So here I'm going through and I'm just doing AK Ultra Matte Varnish because Victor and I, we're obsessed with this varnish.
Yeah.
Such a nice matte finish, and it just makes all the minis look great on camera. I mentioned this already, but the glossiness you get from adding the wash is almost entirely negated from this, and it's pretty easy to do if you have an airbrush. My airbrush isn't expensive, but pay no attention to how dirty my little cup is there.
Yeah.
It's like covered in dried purple.
Apparently, you can brush this on as well. I've used it with a brush, and it goes on.
It does work well.
Yeah, it works
okay,
really nicely.
I've been scared too, but
like you have to be like a little bit careful over like
Yeah.
metallic stuff, but no, it goes on, and it's just as good.
And then finally, I've got a couple tufts here. I've got 2 shades of tufts that I'm just adding. This is extremely extra. You might laugh at me, Victor, but I put a little bit of super glue on the bottom of each tuft just to make sure it sticks down, and then I'm just poking it down with my hobby knife. And that's basically it.
Nice.
Should we do the reveal?
Yeah.
So, I hope you like my orcs. I'm pretty happy with this paint job, despite the weirdness with the Seraphim Sepia stuff.
Yeah, but
I'm pretty happy with this scheme. I like the color choices. I like how they came out. Really, I was happy with how I got the faces to look.
Yeah, they
pretty
look
happy with
great,
the faces. And you know, I was very happy because this paint scheme was featured on the official Warhammer community Instagram page.
yeah,
So that's pretty cool.
This is very cool.
Yeah.
I think these look great. I love a non-traditional paint scheme always, but especially with orcs. Despite my opinions on orcs, which have been well documented, the models are great, you know, and they give so much room for creativity. And I love this sort of like pale skin, orange armor, like November orcs thing.
Yeah,
But it's very
The
cool.
autumn orcs.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Check out our Patreon. Like and subscribe. Rattling painting guide coming soon.
Yep.
And we'll see you in the next one.